Hey, what is going on YouTube? Hey, Aaron here. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry for no stream and or no video yesterday, which is today for me. But anyway, just a little overwhelmed and dealing with a lot of stuff. Nothing bad, just trying to achieve multiple different, trying to really push myself in all aspects of life. And I challenge you guys to do the same. And in part of doing that, Mr. Prophet here, aka Mr. Jones in the comments, asked me to play or showcase the Italian destroyers. And guys, this was my very first game in an Italian destroyer, except for maybe the VR-25, and of course the YOLO Emilio, but that's a little bit different. The Italian destroyers are very unique in the fact that they're not like most other destroyers. I guess obviously if that makes them unique, right? Going very well with words here in this video. But the Italian destroyers have SAP HE and long range, very slow, low alpha torpedoes. On top of that, they are relatively fast and contain the rolling smoke screens. But also, their concealment is terrible. You can see I think I actually have a mostly concealment build here, and our concealment is 6.4. Now, that being said, the SAP absolutely rips other destroyers. The torpedoes have a 90-second reload and a 12-kilometer range. You couple that with some decent HE. It's not the best, definitely not the best, but you couple that with the smoke screens and a little bit of spotting, and you can have a huge impact on the game. Now, like I said, this was my very first game in the Cuniberti here, so I'm a little hesitant. You guys watched the live stream. I said I'm not exactly quite sure how to play these things, but just going off of the basics, right? You should apply this to any class. What is my class? We are in a destroyer, right? What are destroyers best known for? Spotting, capping, torping, fighting enemy destroyers. Now, going into the strategy portion of that game, there was only one enemy destroyer, which we figured out was not on this side with the spot of those two cruisers and the battleship. But also, I said this in the live stream, which is why is it important sometimes to watch the live streams. I sometimes will talk through a lot of these games, but here we're trying to talk through the strategy portion of it with you guys. And part of that is realizing that the Suzuya is a Japanese cruiser and has potentially long-range torpedoes, and those were probably the torpedoes that just went through the cap. On top of that, the enemy destroyer, which again, it could be here, but we see 3 ships spotted and the sea cap has already been detected. So 99.9% chance that the destroyer is on the other flank. I also believe that destroyer was in a division. So just kind of queuing in, to those things is something that will help you, understand where ships are, because it is a Z-23, and we know that the Z-23 has approximately a 4.5 to 5 kilometer hydro. If you overestimate the hydro ranges, you will not get caught. Now, for cruisers and battleships of the German variety, I like to say 6 kilometers, even though it's 5.7 usually, or 5.4, but the destroyers are a little bit less. So if you just think 5 kilometers on average, I think it's 4.5 around, I think it's 4.4, but around that region, then you will not get caught. I learned later on in this game that while these ships have a moderate health pool, you do not want to get caught. So, just trying to stay away from that Z-23, which looks like he has worked his way into the other side of this Bravo cap here, is a very good idea. Getting caught in that hydro, combined with getting shot by other ships, would probably not, lend to us doing it too well. The 19,000 health, which I think we also have sims on this build. I will try to throw that in at the end of the video here. You don't have those, as much health as you do, let's say, in something like the Polo or the YOLO Emilio, which is like I said, a slightly different variation of an Italian destroyer. It's one of those premiums that's literally the name kind of dictates the playstyle, as you just rush battleships with your rolling smoke screen. Now, you can do that with this ship, but you have a little bit more tools to kind of be a little bit more impactful in other ways. And we sort of showcased them in this game. Like I said, this was my very first game in this ship, and I'm still getting a feel for her. Now, what we're doing here is just kind of lining up a few torpedo strikes. We're also waiting for potentially that Z to make a mistake, and what we mean by that is pushing into us. Now, pushing into him would be a clear mistake on our part, and that is when we see this Caricciolo deciding that he doesn't really want to play any longer, pushing into a majority of our fleet. We go ahead and line up the torpedoes here. Now, anything past 7 kilometers, 6 kilometers here with how slow these torps are is pure guesswork. I put them on the line here, and we do actually end up getting a little bit lucky, but with how slow, like we mentioned, and sometimes, trying to torp something at 12 kilometers with these torps, I wouldn't spec into all torpedoes is what I'm trying to say. On top of that, these torps don't do that much damage. If you'll notice, we are slowly ticking a few, there was one penetration with the SAP, but we've ticked, a moderate amount of HP from his superstructure, but I feel like SAP saturates very quickly. And talking about the damage, we have around, 6,000 damage now, and we get 2 torp hits for a nice 22,000 with an extra penetration there, so 14,000 damage approximately, from 2 torpedo hits is not really going to be getting the job done in terms of a pure torp boat. So yes, you can spec every destroyer into and make it a torp boat, but that doesn't mean it is a true torp boat. In the meantime, though, we have kind of been sitting in our smoke, and that is when our Baltimore decides to radar. So we get a nice location of that Z-23. On top of that, we have secured this A side, so there's no point in me really being over here anymore. I could go harass those battleships on the backside, but sometimes you will catch yourself destroyers going into the enemy backfield, and if this Z were to come out or whatever, then you would get caught, and that is a mistake that a lot of destroyer players make. And one mistake I just made here was shooting when I thought I was going to be detected or concealed, and that is when this Suzuya absolutely smashes me. I think he hit every single shell and took nearly half of my health. So I was like, wow, this thing, number one, that was a case of RNG where this guy got, severely lucky with the ripple fire. Not lucky, but the shells landed nice and vertical on me as I was turning there. So a good shot by him, but just an unlucky case of RNG for me. On top of that, we also sent some zoning torps, but in the meantime, talking about overall destroyer strategy, I'm looking at the C flank rather, and I see that one or 2 of our battleships are near the back line there. So I'm thinking, if you're reading the map and paying attention, what I'm trying to get at here is I turned around, and that's what you should do as a destroyer player. Yes, I could somehow get torps on this Colorado, and that's actually what I tried to do for a minute here until I realized that if I don't go and defend our C flank, my team is going to lose. Now, in this decision, I was giving up the B cap, but like we mentioned, that Z-23 has got me beat in pretty much every regard, especially now that I've lost nearly half my health. So there's no other play for me to make except for to go on this backside. And this is, sometimes the frustrating part about playing solo. We had a pretty good Baltimore player here, and our other ships, managed to get some decent scores. But if your team decides that they're all just going to, clump up and die, then yes, you will lose games regardless of the ship you're in. But here, we're just trying to do as much, impact the game as much as we can, distract the enemy team, and our team is getting some kills in the meantime. And that is when I realized that the concealment on these boats is pretty terrible. I didn't really notice it earlier, but I notice it now because in my mind, I should be clear of this Helena, and that is when he goes into my 6.4 detection range and spots me, and I'm like, wait, why am I detected? And then we realize how poor it is. We did pop our smoke, though. The good thing about the Italians is you do get 4 rolling smokes and 3 engine boosts there, so you do have more than the standard 2 consumables to play with. I don't know why Wargaming just wants to make this game like such a mini version, but anyway. Make sure you use them if you do need them, but also make sure you don't get caught, and we will explain that a little bit later because it does sort of happen. And not caught, but the rolling smoke, like we mentioned, you do not outrun it. So if you don't have any spots when you use it, then yes, you're basically just a sitting duck for 50 or so seconds. I don't know why they gave the Italian destroyers the long smoke screen and not the cruisers, but anyway, the Legends development team continues to make clearly the best decisions, like legendary cruisers, right? Sorry, I'm just trolling. I was very happy with training rooms. But anyway, back to the game here. We have a Sinop, which, if you guys know, is a Russian battleship with limited damage cons. So what we're trying to do here is just support our weak side, hopefully get a few of these kills as we, signal to our team to shoot at that Z-23. After taking the amount of damage we have, unless I torp him, there's no real chance of me, beating him in a gunfight at the health that he was currently at in that last frame. But here we decide to launch one spread ahead of the line and one kind of on the line. Like we've mentioned a few times already with these torpedoes, they are so slow that this Sinop could change course a few times, but basically we're just trying to get the most amount of surface area that we can. Like we mentioned, he is a Russian battleship and has limited damage cons. So if we had a little bit more health and or another smoke screen at this time, I would definitely pop it and try to start a fire or SAP his superstructure. You're going to have to get a feel for the SAP. We've mentioned it, we've done a few videos before. The SAP is pretty decent as we get another torp hit for a flood, and he also took a shot from somebody else. But you can see with our damage. He's still flooding. Like we mentioned, the limited damage cons is definitely a disadvantage, but one of the balancing factors for the Russians. But as we were saying, you're going to have to play with the SAP, when to use it, where to shoot. Shooting at the stern, the superstructure, and the bow plating is definitely going to be your friend, and you can rack up a decent amount of damage. We go ahead and decide to shoot here, and that is when the Sinop floods out. Now, if he would have repaired, we could have been in a little bit of trouble, but we also looked at the guns of the Georgia. I don't know if you can see them quite here, but they're not really in the right position. So the Georgia may get one salvo off on us. Of course, we could turn into that and probably dodge all. He's not going to dev strike us is what I'm saying here. He could still get a few pens, which would be detrimental to us. After this, we could probably not open water, but our smoke is back up. We timed this engagement rather well, flooding out the Sinop, and that is when we decide to use our rolling smoke. I'm really hoping he shoots here, and he does, so thank you, Mr. Georgia, for giving us that added concealment. But you guys will notice towards the end of this smoke screen, as we mentioned a few times, the Georgia does not shoot again, which, because there is no other spotting, allows him to go dark, and we have no other way to detect him because of our rolling smoke. But here we're just going to go ahead and throw out these torpedoes as, sort of guesses. It looked like he was turning. We're also going to go further in this direction. Why? That turns his guns and his attention this way if he decides to focus on us. If not, then he's going to have to deal with the rest of my, our friendly team here. But he gets detected right before our smoke runs out as the Amagi takes out our North Carolina. So our team has done a decent job, like we mentioned, on the opposite flank. They actually just finished getting the B cap, but there's still, a potential, right? We have done a lot in terms of damage, in terms of capping, in terms of defending, and in terms of distracting the enemy team. That is what these ships are going to be the best at. You can see here, we're just getting kind of trolled. He doesn't have that much health left on his superstructure. I'm playing with the ammo types as we get 3 pens there for 800 damage. You're not going to be racking up the damage like you would have been in the Daring or another gunboat potentially, especially with a much better fire chance. I don't know how many HE salvos, but you can see we don't have a single fire. But we end up getting that kill anyway. So just keep those things in mind. You're going to want to aim for superstructure, bow, and stern plating, obviously. Trying to pen the main armor belts with SAP and the HE there is not going to do well for you. And that is when the Z-23 pops up here. I think he was shooting at the battleship. Now, the game is essentially over for the enemy team. They're down a good portion of ships and caps. But we go ahead and take some decent lead. It feels like these shells have a rather slow velocity or medium velocity, but we take a good lead and actually get the kill on him. The SAP on destroyers, as we make the Sigma Bale face there for playing what a lot of people consider to be the worst Tier 7 destroyer and doing fairly well with it. But the SAP on destroyers is your best option. That will absolutely rip destroyers. I know a viewer, Mr. Pixel, he plays them. He plays these Italian destroyers pretty well, and that's something that I should have done a while back when they first came out. Is give these things a try and a chance. A lot of people just kind of stick to what they know, and there's nothing wrong with that. But playing the same nation and same class of ships over and over again, let's use the Sumner, for example, hint, hint, wink, wink. A few of you got that one. Playing the Sumner or the Daring or the Worcester over and over and over again. Yes, you may get a few good games or improve slightly in that class, but you kind of have to improve and play all the nations and classes to really be considered a great player. Picking up this Italian destroyer and making an impact on the game is a pretty good example of that. Now, that being said, I think the Italian destroyers definitely have a place in the game. I think they could use a slight buff in some regard. I don't exactly know what that buff would be, and I know that a huge problem with balancing is Wargaming takes the absolute worst players and they just, for example, the worst players are probably not playing this ship. They may play it 1 or 2 times, do very poorly, as we get a nice 25-57 total there with 3 kills. No medals, but as you can see, a #1 placement on the board is always a good game. But as I was saying, Wargaming's balancing department, they do a half-decent job some days, and then other days they buff the Colbert. So I think that, certain classes, certain nations could use a little bit of looking into, and if they actually played them, then it might help. But who am I to know? They have a half-decent game, which I play almost every day. So I just wish it was maybe looked at a little bit more. But anyway, that's just my opinion. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. But here we have the modules, and very shortly we will be going over the commander, standard aiming system, propulsion, concealment, and then we actually have gun reload. And guys, I'm going to be honest, I don't know. I had no idea what I was doing when I was specking this out. This is just the highest Italian DD commander I had, and those were the inspirations. So we had Bay for an additional concealment, which is probably not needed. You're not gaining that much. I probably would put Mordoff for gun reload, or I don't know. There's probably a better build is what I'm trying to say for this, but this is the build I had during the game, and as you can see, it was moderately effective. But that is the video, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Let me know what you guys think about these Italian destroyers. Have you tried them yet? Do you enjoy them? Do you hate them? Have you played against them? Let me know your thoughts and feelings and opinions and concerns. And, let me just know anything in the comments. Just type literally anything. But you guys have a great day. I love you guys. I will see you tonight, which will probably be Tuesday, on stream. And then I want to play a little Battlefield. So Ships has been getting monotonous, but any game you play for 4 years would probably do that to anybody. But that's the video. You guys have a great day. I'm out. Peace.